Bring you this discussion now. The South African Human Rights Commission in the Western Cape is investigating an alleged racist incident that took place on a flight from Durban to Cape Town last month. In a video that's now gone viral on social media, a passenger can be seen making racially charged comments towards the flight attendant. This happened allegedly after the flight crew refused to serve her more alcohol on that flight. Let's get a better sense of the nature of the investigation. Bring in Commissioner Tshepo Madlingozi. He's responsible for equality, anti-racism, education and justice with the Commission and is with us here in studio. Thank you for popping by, Commissioner. Welcome to the SABC.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and your viewers.
It's a story that I think doesn't even need context given how widespread that video was at the height of the reaction to it. But I think it's worth taking a few steps back. What has the Commission been able to ascertain around what happened?
Yeah, so I can confirm that the Human Rights Commission received 3 complaints from the Free State, from Gauteng, as well as the Western Cape. Our Western Cape office is investigating the matter. We received the matter maybe at the beginning of the year. So the team is still assessing the merits of the complaints. We've been able to ascertain 2 things. Number one, that the complainants are alleging 2 things. Some are alleging that this is racist. It's an incident of racism. Other complainants are alleging that this is an incident of hate speech.
Right. I wonder if we can go deeper into that, and maybe I should ask a much clearer question. What exactly is the Commission then investigating themselves?
We are investigating whether this case raises a prima facie case of racism or hate speech in terms of the Equality Act.
Okay. And I suppose now we have cases that we can refer to in trying to ascertain how this could go, but who are you going to be speaking to in trying to place exactly whether or not, in fact, this individual at the center of this is guilty of these charges?
Yes, so first of all, we have to speak to the complainants, who I must say they were not the 2 parties that you see on the video, they are members of the public. So we'll speak to the complainants. Secondly, we've asked for passengers who were on that flight to please get in touch with us so that we can get more details on the matter. Thirdly, of course, then we'll meet the alleged victim as well as the alleged perpetrator.
Who would the alleged victim be, the complainants?
No, it will be the person that you see on the video whose remarks are being made to.
Okay, all right. It's difficult to think what else might form part of the investigation outside the video that went viral. I mean, what else outside of the conversations you'll be having with those people are going to be using as part of your fact-finding mission?
Yeah, so that's why in our press statement we've asked for passengers who were on that flight to please get in touch with us, because you know, when we get to videos, a video is a frame, it's a narrative, it's a specific context. So it will be important to understand, you know, the whole scenario. What led to the disagreement, if we can call it that for now? What led to it escalating as it is? What words were exchanged? And so forth. So we will speak to passengers to get clarity on the context. We will speak to the pilots, the captain, we'll speak to the steward, not only the one in question, so that we get the full holistic story.
Yeah. These moments also allow us to speak about the role of the Commission itself as a Chapter 9 institution. I know in the past there's always been questions around whether or not it has any teeth, so to speak. What are the possible consequences on the other side of this investigation if, in fact, the Commission finds that the individual is guilty of these allegations?
Well, if we do find that this case raises a prima facie case of racism or hate speech, we have 2 ways to deal with it. The first one, of course, is to propose mediation between the 2 parties. Now, mediation is always a voluntary process. It's up to individuals to say whether they want to, you know, to meet each other and meet halfway. So it's voluntary, as I say. The second way is to go to the Equality Court, to institute a case before the Equality Court. At the Equality Court, we normally ask for 4, you know, orders. The first one is a public apology if the incident took place publicly, a public apology. Secondly, a monetary fine. Thirdly, a community service where the person will be asked to do certain hours, to undertake certain hours of community service so that they become a better citizen. And then the 4th one is a diversity training for them to understand what is offensive, what is not offensive, and so forth. So it's very, very serious. I mean, this is a court order if the person is found to be guilty. But broadly speaking, for us as a commission, it is a opportunity for pedagogy to educate members of the public that, 30 years into democracy, there's a need for us to be more intentional about the unfinished business of reconciliation and of nation building.
Yeah. That's a loaded response, but before we get into that, I just wanted to gauge from you, in many instances, people on the receiving side of racism can identify it, but it still feels very elusive. Like, how do I describe the fact that somebody's been racist to me? And essentially, this is, I suppose, a roundabout way of asking the question of how you determine, for example, a monetary compensation for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only in racist cases, right? It's also when somebody has, has been homophobic.
Right.
Someone has, insulted someone, has injured their reputation. There's precedent in the court to determine the amount that is used to punish the person, as it were. There's not one amount that we can mention. It depends on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the nature of the offense, shall we call it that. It depends on the ability of the person to pay. There's no need for me saying, I must pay 500,000, but I cannot afford to do so. What is the point of that? So we look at all the circumstances, and there's been a lot of jurisprudence in this.
Speaking about precedent, I'm sure you've been following the debate, sometimes in literature, about who can and can't be racist. I wonder if I can take you towards that. Essentially, for people who aren't really following that, and this is very plainly put, there is a notion out there that black people can't be racist because it's black people who are on the receiving end of most of the racism in the country, or in the world, quite frankly. To what extent are you veering into that, and opening that can of worms in trying to ascertain whether or not there's a prima facie case here?
Yeah, it's a long-standing debate whether black people can be racist. It goes to the definition of racism, whether, it should not include power, the ability, the structural, institutional ability, the economic, material ability to put someone at a disadvantage, not just to insult, not just to be offensive, not just to discriminate. So there is that view that racism comes with power, structural power, institutional power, and so forth. Secondly, it goes to the definition because there are people who say racism means anti-blackness, therefore it cannot be applied in different cases, and therefore someone who's black cannot be anti-black. But we also know that, there are black-skinned white mask people who have internalized racism. How do you deal with those kind of people? We know that some people talk about double consciousness, people who replicate, the oppressor's view of doing things. But in South Africa, there's a sense that over the past 30 years, we have focused on racism as it pertains to so-called black Africans. I'm using that term loosely, but not as it pertains to Indians and coloreds. And as a Human Rights Commission, we want to dispel that notion to say racism applies to everyone, against, everyone. So it is contentious. The Labor Court has found that, black people can, commit racism sometimes, So let's put this to court and let's hear what the court says. As a Human Rights Commission, we do have cases before the Equality Court where we have taken some black people who have called Indian people the C word, for example. And we'll hear what the court says about that.
Absolutely. Very interesting indeed. As we continue maturing as a democracy, I imagine these debates were inevitable. Commissioner Tshepo Madlingozi, thanks for popping by. Hopefully the first of many discussions ahead, given what's now taken place. The Commissioner is, of course, responsible for equality, anti-racism, education and justice with the South African Human Rights Commission. Once again, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you so much.